We are going to map out a territory that every single one of you carries around every second of every day. But I would bet almost anything that very few of us actually understand how it works.
It is a landscape that is, well, surprisingly vast. I think when most people picture their abdomen, they have this vague notion of a stomach and then just a bunch of tubes.
Yeah, a jumble of pipes.
But if you actually unpack the midsection, specifically the small intestine, you are dealing with a biological machine of massive scale and incredible sophistication.
That was the first thing in the research that really, it just stopped me in my tracks. The sheer math of it. We call it the small intestine, but that's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it?
It is a complete misnomer. The word small only refers to the diameter, the width of the tube.
Ah, okay.
But in terms of length and, crucially, surface area, it is the absolute giant of the internal organs.
Mm-hmm.
In a living adult, when surgeons are actually in there measuring it during an operation, it usually clocks in around 5 meters.
5 meters. That's over 16 feet.
16 feet of tubing crammed into your midsection.
I was trying to visualize that. 5 meters. That's roughly the height of a giraffe.
Yeah.
Just coiled up inside the area around your belly button.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
And the sources highlighted a massive variance here, which is fascinating in itself. It's not a standard part like a spark plug in a car.
Right.
In adults, the literature says it can range anywhere from 3 meters, which is still huge, all the way up to 8.5 meters.
Right, 8.5. That is a huge range. It's almost triple. Imagine if leg lengths varied that much.
You'd have some very interesting basketball games.
You could have one person with 3 meters of gut, and the person sitting right next to them has nearly 3 times that amount. How does that even work?
It creates a massive logistical challenge for the body. You have to pack a 5-meter, or sometimes an 8-meter, highly sophisticated chemical processing plant into a confined cavity.
And not just pack it.
No, you have to supply it with blood, you have to drain the nutrients you're absorbing, and maybe most importantly, you have to keep it from tangling into a knot that would, kill you.
So that is our roadmap for today. We aren't just doing Digestion 101. We are going to act like cartographers mapping this internal territory.
I like that.
We're going to look at the geography, the actual shape and layout. Then we're going to look at the plumbing, the blood vessels, which are engineering marvels in themselves. And finally, because this is the deep dive, we're zooming in with a microscope to see the millions of tiny workers that actually keep us alive.
And the guiding principle I want everyone to keep in mind as we walk through this is that concept of form follows function. This organ has to be 2 contradictory things at once. Well, it has to be a robust mechanical conveyor belt, physically pushing food along. But at the same time, it has to be this delicate, permeable sensory organ capable of absorbing individual molecules.
It's like a velvet sledgehammer.
That's a very evocative way to put it. I like that.
All right, so let's start with the geography. The journey begins right after the food leaves the stomach. We enter the first section, the duodenum.
The duodenum.
Yeah.
It is the shortest part of the small intestine, only about 25 centimeters. So roughly the span of your hand, from thumb to pinky.
So not very long at all.
No. But despite its small size, it is arguably the most complex and, I'd say, high-stakes piece of real estate in the entire abdomen.
The sources describe it as having a C shape.
Yes. The best way to visualize it is like a car tire wrapped around a hubcap. The duodenum is the tire, and the head of the pancreas is the hubcap. It wraps tightly around the pancreas.
And that relationship is important.
It's crucial, because the pancreas is intimately connected to digestion. It's the enzyme factory, and it needs to dump its products directly into the C-shaped loop.
Okay, so they're fused together for a reason. And unlike the rest of the intestine, which can kind of flop around, the duodenum is mostly fixed, right?
Correct. Most of your intestine is what we call intraperitoneal. It's mobile. It can shift as you move. The duodenum, however, is mostly retroperitoneal.
What does that mean exactly? Retroperitoneal.
It means it's plastered to the back wall of the abdomen, kind of behind the main abdominal lining. It's anchored. It doesn't move.
Which gives it a very predictable location for surgeons.
And for all the other structures that need to connect to it, it's the anchor point.
Now, because of this C shape and its fixed nature, anatomists divide the duodenum into 4 distinct parts. I want to walk through these one by one because reading the notes, it seems like each part has its own specific danger zone or medical drama attached to it.
Absolutely. It's a bit of a gauntlet for the food to run through, a very important one.
So let's start with part 1, the superior part. What's happening here?
Okay, so this is the first 5 centimeters coming right off the stomach. Anatomists and surgeons often call it the duodenal bulb, or the duodenal cap.
The bulb.
Yeah, because it looks a bit swollen on an X-ray. Now, here's a nuance the sources point out that's actually quite important. The very first 2.5 centimeters is still mobile. It's still attached to a ligament called the hepatoduodenal ligament. But the second 2.5 centimeters becomes fixed. It becomes retroperitoneal.
And that transition point is where things can get tricky.
Well, the major clinical detail here is all about ulcers. This first part, the bulb, is by far the most common site for duodenal ulcers.
Why there, specifically?
You have this high-acid chyme, this soupy mix from your stomach, just pouring in and hitting this wall first. It's the front line.
So it takes the brunt of the acid.
It takes the full force. But here's where anatomy gets incredibly high stakes. Located immediately behind this first part of the duodenum is a major artery, the gastroduodenal artery.
I see where you're going with this. If you have an ulcer, which is basically a hole forming in the wall of the gut, and that hole happens to be on the back wall,
it can erode right through the wall and into that artery.
Yeah.
It's like drilling a hole in the wall of your house and hitting the main water main, except it's high-pressure blood.
So a massive hemorrhage.
A massive life-threatening hemorrhage. It's a classic anatomical relationship that every surgeon worries about. Posterior ulcer equals bleeding. It's a mantra.
Wow. And just to be clear, what if the ulcer perforates the front wall instead?
That's also an emergency, but a different kind. If it perforates the anterior wall, it bursts open into the main abdominal cavity.
So it spills gut contents.
Exactly. That causes peritonitis, a severe infection and inflammation of the abdominal lining. It's incredibly painful, but it's not the immediate catastrophic arterial bleed you get from the back wall. The mechanics are totally different, based on a few millimeters of geography.
Incredible. Okay, so we survive the bulb. Now the C shape turns a sharp corner and goes down. This is the second part, the descending part.
This runs vertically down the right side of your spine. And if the first part was the acid zone, this is the intersection point. This is Grand Central Station.
The intersection, what's intersecting?
This is where the liver and the pancreas plug into the system.
We're talking about the bile duct from the liver and the main pancreatic duct.
Exactly. They come down, and they usually unite to form a common channel, and they punch through the wall of the duodenum at a specific spot. This spot is called the ampulla of Vater.
Ampulla of Vater. It sounds like a villain in a sci-fi movie. I'm the ampulla of Vater.
It does sound pretty ominous, doesn't it? And on the inside of the gut, if you were looking with an endoscope, it creates this little bump called the major duodenal papilla.
And what's happening at this bump?
It's actually covered by a little fold of tissue, like a hood. And this is where the real chemistry happens. You have the acid chyme coming down from the stomach, and suddenly, bam, it gets hit with two things at once. It gets hit with bile, which emulsifies fats, and it gets hit with a cocktail of powerful pancreatic enzymes to break down proteins and carbohydrates.
So this is the mixing chamber.
Precisely. It's where you neutralize the acid and start the heavy-duty digestion. And it's another point of potential failure.
How so?
If this drainage point gets blocked, say, by a gallstone that's passed down the bile duct and gotten stuck in that ampulla.
The drain is clogged.
The drain is clogged. The bile and pancreatic enzymes can't get out. They back up. This can cause jaundice, but more dangerously, it can cause the enzymes to activate inside the pancreas itself.
It starts digesting itself.
It starts digesting itself. That's
Yeah.
pancreatitis, a very serious condition, all because this tiny little opening gets plugged.
And the sources mention another duct.
Oh, right. Just to add a layer of complexity, sometimes there's a second smaller accessory duct from the pancreas. It's called the duct of Santorini that enters a little bit above that at a spot called the minor papilla. But the major papilla is the main event.
Okay, moving on. We've gone down, now we turn the corner again. We are in the third part, the horizontal part.
This part runs from right to left, crossing over the spine. And this is where the anatomy gets incredibly tight. The sources call this the nutcracker. And it is absolutely not an exaggeration.
Okay, set the scene for us. What is crushing what in this so-called nutcracker?
All right, visualize the spinal column in your lower back. Sitting right on top of the spine is the aorta, the biggest, highest pressure artery in the body. That's the floor.
The anvil?
The anvil. Perfect. Now, branching off the front of the aorta is another massive vessel, the superior mesenteric artery, or the SMA. It comes off at a sharp downward angle.
Like a branch coming off a tree trunk.
Exactly. And the horizontal part of the duodenum has the unfortunate luck of having to run between that branch and the trunk. It runs strictly between the SMA in the front and the aorta in the back.
So the duodenum is,
Right.
It's sandwiched.
It is clamped. Usually there's a nice pad of intra-abdominal fat in that angle that acts as a cushion. It keeps the artery propped up just enough so that food can pass through the duodenum without any issue.
But I'm guessing that cushion isn't always there. What happens if you lose it?
This leads to a fascinating and frankly terrifying condition called SMA syndrome, or sometimes Wilkie's syndrome.
Okay.
If a patient loses a significant amount of weight very, very quickly, say from a severe illness or an eating disorder or a major surgery, that fat pad disappears. It gets metabolized.
Then the angle closes?
The angle between the artery and the aorta closes down. The artery clamps down on the duodenum like a pair of scissors.
Artichoke.
Exactly like a nutcracker. It compresses the duodenum against the aorta. So the patient tries to eat, but the food physically cannot pass that pinch point.
So it's a mechanical obstruction.
So it's a pure mechanical obstruction.
Yeah.
And it creates this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
The obstruction leads to severe vomiting, which leads to more weight loss.
Which makes the pinch even tighter.
It's a downward spiral. And it's all dictated by the geometry of this one single crossing point.
Yeah.
Just a few degrees of angle make the difference between eating lunch comfortably and a life-threatening medical emergency.
That is just wild. It really shows how tight the packaging is inside of us. There is no wasted space.
Not a millimeter.
Okay, let's finish the C. We've gone down, we've gone across, now we go up. We have the forced part, the ascending part.
A short segment that turns up and ends at what we call the duodenojejunal flexure. A flexure is just a bend.
And that's the finish line for the duodenum?
That's the finish line. This is where the duodenum officially ends, and the next part, the jejunum, begins. And there's a very specific structure here holding it up, essentially an anatomical landmark or anchor.
The ligament of Treitz?
The suspensory ligament is a duodenum, or ligament of Treitz, yes. It's a band of connective tissue and some smooth muscle fibers that anchors this junction up to the diaphragm area.
Why is that ligament so important?
It's a crucial landmark for surgeons. If a surgeon needs to run the bowel, meaning inspect it from start to finish to look for damage or a blockage, and they need to know where is the absolute start, they find the ligament of Treitz.
And that tells them where they are.
It's the definitive line.
Mm-hmm.
Everything before that is duodenum. Everything after is jejunum.
So that wraps up the duodenum. Fixed, C-shaped, complex, danger zones everywhere. Now, before we go down the rest of this 5-meter slide, we really need to talk about the life support system, the plumbing.
The vascular supply. And this is just beautiful, beautiful engineering. The intestine is a hungry organ. It needs a massive amount of blood, especially when you're digesting a meal.
The outline mentions that the duodenum is special because it gets a dual supply. What does that mean?
Right. So embryologically, when you're developing, the gut is divided into sections based on which artery supplies it. You have the foregut, the midgut, and the hindgut.
Okay.
The duodenum sits right on the border, the transition point between the foregut and the midgut. So it gets the best of both worlds.
It gets blood from 2 different major systems.
Exactly. It gets blood from the celiac trunk system, which is the main artery for the foregut, feeding the stomach and liver. That comes in via an artery called the superior pancreaticoduodenal artery.
Okay, that's supply number 1.
But it also gets blood from the superior mesenteric artery system, the main midgut artery, via the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery.
It's like having 2 separate power grids connected to your house. If one goes down,
The other takes over. This is called collateral circulation. And because it's so rich in the duodenum, it is actually quite rare for this specific part of the gut to suffer from ischemia or lack of blood flow. It's got a backup generator built in.
very clever design. But once we move past the duodenum, once we're past that ligament of Treitz, we are fully in the domain of the SMA.
The superior mesenteric artery, it's the engine of the midgut. It originates from the aorta, right at the level of the first lumbar vertebra, L1, just below the celiac trunk. It's a massive vessel.
It drapes over a few things, right?
Yeah, it does. As it comes down, it drapes over the left renal vein, the vein from your left kidney, and also part of the pancreas. Then it sends out branches. Branches to the left go to feed the rest of the small intestine, the jejunum and ileum. And branches to the right go to feed the first part of the colon.
Now here is where it gets really interesting for anyone who likes patterns. If you are a surgeon and you've picked up a random loop of intestine in the middle of a surgery, how do you know if you're holding the beginning part, the jejunum, or the end part, the ileum?
Right, you can't just look at the odometer because there isn't one.
And it all just looks like pink tubing.
It does at first glance, but you have to look at the blood vessels in the mesentery. The mesentery is that sheet of tissue that attaches the gut to the back wall and carries the blood supply. And the architecture of those vessels changes completely as you go down.
Tell us about the arcades. What are those?
So the arteries don't just go in a straight line from the main trunk to the gut. That would be inefficient and prone to kinking. Instead, they form loops, like arches. We call them arterial arcades. In the jejunum, the upper part of the small intestine, the pattern is very simple and elegant. You usually have just one or maybe two rows of very large arches.
Simple loops.
Simple, large loops. And coming off those final loops are the arteries that go directly to the gut wall. We call them the vasa recta, which just means straight vessels.
And in the jejunum, what do they look like?
In the jejunum, these vasa recta are long and straight. Think of it like a simple highway system in the countryside with very long, straight driveways leading to the houses.
Okay, simple arches, long driveways. Got it. Now, what about in the ileum, the last part?
As you move down into the ileum, the pattern gets much, much more complex. The arches start to stack on top of each other. You get 3, 4, or even 5 tiers of smaller arches.
So it's not a simple loop anymore.
Not at all. It looks like a complex lace doily or a spider web if you hold it up to the light. It's this intricate network of arches.
A lace pattern.
Right. And because all these arches pile up and get closer and closer to the gut wall, the vasa recta, the final driveways, become very, very short.
So to recap, jejunum is simple arches, long, straight vasa recta. Ileum is a complex web of arches with short vasa recta.
You got it. And a surgeon can see that difference instantly. It's such a cool visual way to tell where you are in the dark, messy cavity of the abdomen. It's almost like reading a map key printed on the tissue itself.
It's incredibly reliable, and while we are on plumbing, we have to mention the drainage, the venous side of the equation. Where does all this blood go after it's picked up the nutrients?
It all drains into the superior mesenteric vein, the SMV, which generally runs alongside the SMA.
And this doesn't go straight back to the general circulation, back to the heart, right?
No, and for a very, very good reason. The SMV joins up with the splenic vein, which is draining the spleen and parts of the stomach. And where they meet behind the neck of the pancreas, they form a new, huge vein, the portal vein.
A portal vein, and its destination is?
The liver. This blood is full of raw nutrients you just absorbed from your meal sugars, amino acids. But it's also potentially full of toxins, bacteria that might have slipped through, drugs you've ingested.
So you do not want that pumping straight to your brain or your heart?
Absolutely not. So it goes to the liver first. The liver is the customs checkpoint. It's the body's main detoxification center. It processes everything, filters the toxins, metabolizes the drugs, stores glucose, and only then does it release the clean blood into the general circulation to go back to the heart.
It's a critical safety valve.
A life-saving one.
Okay, so we've left the complex duodenum, we understand the plumbing, now we are in the main drag, the jejunum and the ileum, this long, winding road.
5 meters of it.
Is there a sharp dividing line here? Do you cross a border and suddenly there's a welcome to the ileum sign?
Not at all. It's a very gradual transition. A surgeon can tell the difference based on those vessels and other features, but there's no single point.
Sure.
But generally, the rule of thumb anatomists use is that the proximal or upper 2/5 is jejunum, and the distal or lower 3/5 is ileum.
And despite looking similar from a distance, you're saying they have very different personalities.
Very different jobs and therefore very different structures.
Let's profile them. Let's start with the jejunum. What's its deal?
Think of the jejunum as the active absorber. It's the real workhorse of nutrient absorption. It's located mostly in the upper left quadrant of the abdomen.
And if you were to touch it, does it feel different?
It does. It has a thicker, more muscular wall. It's redder in color, more vibrant.
Because of that bigger blood supply we talked about, the long vasa recta.
Precisely. It's getting more fuel because it's doing more work. And the text mentions those windows in the mesentery.
Right. What are those?
This is another great visual trick for surgeons. In the mesentery of the jejunum, that yellow fatty tissue doesn't quite reach all the way to the wall of the gut. It leaves these little gaps. So if you hold the mesentery up to the operating light, you can see through these small translucent spots near the gut edge. We call them windows.
Okay, so that's the outside. What's happening inside the jejunum? What does the lining look like?
It's built for one thing, maximum surface area. If you open it up, the first thing you see are these tall, dense, circular folds. They're called plicae circularis.
Plicae circularis.
And these aren't just temporary wrinkles like you see in the stomach. They are permanent, deep folds of the entire lining. They feel thick and substantial. Their job is to slow the food down, churn it, and provide a massive area for absorption to happen.
Okay, so jejunum is thick, red, has windows in its mesentery, and is very, very folded on the inside. Got it. Now let's contrast that with the ileum.
The ileum is what I'd call the immune specialist. Its main job shifts. It's located mostly in the lower right quadrant and can dip down into the pelvis.
And how does it look and feel different?
The wall is thinner. It's paler, less red, because the blood supply is a bit less intense.
And the fat in the mesentery, no more windows?
The fat behavior changes here. In the ileum, the fat creeps from the mesentery right onto the gut wall. It wraps around it more so you don't get those nice translucent windows you see in the jejunum. We actually call it creeping fat.
Interesting. And on the inside, what happened to all those folds?
The folds flatten out. They become much smaller and sparser. By the time you get to the very end of the ileum, right before it joins the colon, the wall is almost smooth.
So less absorption going on.
Much less. But as the folds disappear, you start seeing something else appear. Peyer's patches.
These are the immune centers.
Exactly. These are large, aggregated lymphoid nodules. They look like little oval masses or collections of bumps on the wall. And they're specifically found on the antimesenteric border. That's the side of the gut tube that's away from the blood supply.
Why are they clustered down there in the ileum? Why not in the jejunum?
Think about the flow of traffic and the neighborhood. The further down the digestive tract you go, the slower the flow of food becomes, and the closer you are to the colon.
Which is packed with bacteria.
Absolutely packed. The bacterial load in the ileum is exponentially higher than in the jejunum. So you need more police presence. You need more border patrol agents to monitor the situation and prevent that bacteria from trying to invade the bloodstream. That's the ileum's primary job.
So, to put it simply, jejunum grabs the food, ileum watches for the bad guys.
That's a great summary. Broadly speaking, yes. The jejunum is the kitchen and dining room. The ileum is the border patrol and security checkpoint.
Now, I want to do the zoom in. We've talked about folds and tubes and blood vessels, but the real magic of the small intestine, the thing that makes it all work, is microscopic. The sources describe the lining as looking like velvet.
That is the perfect description. If you were to look at the lining, even under a simple magnifying glass, you'd see it's not smooth at all. It's covered in millions and millions of tiny, finger-like projections called villi.
How big are we talking? Can you see them?
They're about 0.5 to 1 millimeter tall, so just barely visible to the naked eye if you look closely. In the duodenum and jejunum, where absorption is maxed out, they are tall and leaf-shaped. As you go down into the ileum, they get a bit shorter and more finger-shaped, sparser. But their entire purpose is to massively increase the surface area.
It's like the difference between a flat field and a dense forest.
Exactly. And then, on top of the villi,
Yeah.
it just keeps going.
It's fractals. It's structure on structure.
It is. The cells that make up the villi, these individual epithelial cells, have their own folds on their surface. We call these microvilli. This is the brush border.
So you have massive folds, the plicae, which are covered in villi, and the cells on the villi are covered in microvilli. It's folding upon folding upon folding.
Yes. It's an incredible strategy to maximize the available space.
And the math on this is just staggering. The sources say if you took a small intestine and smoothed out all those layers of folding, the plicae, the villi, the microvilli,
The total surface area would cover a tennis court.
a devil's tennis court, all of that surface area is packed inside your belly.
It has to be. You need that massive contact area to absorb nutrients efficiently in the short amount of time before they pass through. If it were just a smooth tube the size of a garden hose, the food would slide right out before you absorb much of anything.
So it's all about maximizing contact time and contact area.
That's the name of the game.
Now let's talk about the workforce, the cells. Who actually lives in this velvet forest?
It's a very diverse and incredibly organized community. The main residents, the most common cell type, are the enterocytes.
Okay.
These are the tall, column-shaped cells that do the heavy lifting of absorption. They are the ones with that brush border of microvilli on top, and they are packed with the enzymes and transporters needed to pull nutrients out of the gut and into the body.
And they don't live very long, do they? I was shocked when I read this.
No. This is one of the most dynamic, high-turnover tissues in the entire body. An enterocyte has a very short, very defined life. He was born deep in the valleys between the villi.
These are the crypts of Lieberkühn.
The crypts of Lieberkühn, yes. Think of the crypt as the factory basement or the cellular nursery. The cell is born there from a stem cell, and then it begins to migrate up the side of the villus, like it's on a cellular escalator.
And as it moves up, it matures and starts working.
Exactly. It differentiates, turns on all its absorptive machinery, and does its job of absorbing nutrients as it travels up.
And then what happens when it reaches the top?
It reaches the peak of the villus, and after about 5 days of life, it undergoes programmed cell death apoptosis, and is shed off into the gut lumen.
Wait, it just falls off into the
Yeah.
to the food stream.
And then it's digested along with everything else.
So we're constantly digesting our own intestinal lining.
Constantly, you replace your entire intestinal lining every 4 to 5 days. It is a ceaseless river of cells flowing from the crypt to the tip of the villus.
That turnover rate just puts any other organ to shame. And that, of course, brings us to the stem cells, the source of this river.
The engine of renewal. These are located deep in the crypts in a very protected environment. These stem cells are marked by a protein called LGR5 plus plenty. They are some of the most rapidly dividing cells in the adult body.
How rapid?
They can divide about every 24 hours. That's what's required to replenish this entire massive surface area every few days.
And this explains a major and very difficult side effect of chemotherapy, right?
It explains it perfectly. Chemotherapy is a blunt instrument. It's designed to kill rapidly dividing cells. That's how it targets and kills cancer.
But the body doesn't have that many non-cancerous cells that divide that fast.
Exactly. Hair follicles are one, bone marrow is another, and the gut stem cells are the big one. The chemo drugs can't tell the difference between a dividing cancer cell and a dividing gut stem cell.
So the chemo attacks the factory.
It attacks the factory. It knocks out the stem cells. The cellular escalator grinds to a halt. The lining can't be replaced, and it literally starts to degrade and break down because the new recruits aren't coming up from the crypt.
Which leads to all the terrible gut issues patients experience.
Exactly. Mucositis, which is painful ulceration, and terrible diarrhea. It's a direct consequence of this incredible rate of renewal.
Okay, who else is living down in the crypts? I saw mention of a very interesting cell type called Paneth cells.
Ah, the Paneth cells. They are fascinating. They break the rule. Unlike all the other cells that are born in the crypt and move up the escalator to the
Once
villus,
they go down?
Paneth cells move down to the very bottom of the crypt. They are long-lived, and they stay there.
What is their job at the bottom of this valley?
They are the guardians of the stem cell niche. They sit right next to the precious stem cells. Their cytoplasm is filled with these big, bright pink granules that are packed with antimicrobial molecules.
Natural antibiotics.
Powerful natural antibiotics like defensins and lysozyme. They're constantly secreting these substances into the crypt, keeping it sterile and protecting the all-important stem cells from any bacteria that might try to invade from the lumen.
They are the bouncers of the stem cell nightclub?
That is a perfect analogy. They stand at the door of the stem cell niche and make sure no pathogens get in to mess with the factory equipment.
What about the mucus? We need lubrication to keep things moving.
That's the job of the goblet cells. They are interspersed between the enterocytes, and they get their name because they look like little wine goblets, and the cup part is just filled with mucus that they secrete onto the surface.
And there's a pattern with these as well, right?
There is. Here's a rule for you. The number of goblet cells increases as you go down the tract. You find some in the duodenum, more in the jejunum, and a huge number in the ileum and colon.
Why is that? What's the logic there?
Think about the consistency of the intestinal contents. In the duodenum and jejunum, the chyme is very liquid. It flows easily. But as it moves along, water is constantly being absorbed out of it.
So it gets thicker, drier.
It gets drier and stickier. By the time you get to the ileum, and especially the colon, you need a lot more lubrication, more mucus, to keep the increasingly solid stool moving along smoothly. So more grease is needed to keep the wheels turning downstream.
That makes perfect sense. And there's one more specialized cell type I want to touch on, specifically related to those Peyer's patches we mentioned in the ileum, the M cells.
The microfold cells, or M cells. If the Paneth cells are the bouncers, the M cells are the spies.
Spies? How are they spying?
They are very specialized cells that sit in the epithelium right on top of the lymphoid tissue of the Peyer's patches. Unlike the enterocytes, which have a thick protective coating to block things from getting in, M cells have these little pockets or microfolds on their surface.
And they use these pockets to do what?
They use them to actively sample what's in the gut lumen. They will literally grab a bacterium or a food antigen, pull it inside themselves in a little bubble, transport it across their body, and then hand it over to the immune cells, the macrophages and lymphocytes that are waiting right underneath them.
It's like passing a note under the door to the security team.
That's exactly it. The note says, here is a sample of what I just found out here. Is this guy on the wanted list? Is this dangerous? It's how your immune system constantly monitors what is in your gut without having to open the floodgates and let everything in. It's how you build tolerance to food and immunity to gut pathogens.
It's just incredible how specialized this all is. It's not just a gut wall. It's this living, breathing ecosystem with farmers, bouncers, spies, and factory workers.
It really is. And scattered among all these are also the enteroendocrine cells, the hormone producers, secreting things like gastrin, CCK, and secretin to coordinate the whole process, and even tough cells, which are chemosensory cells that help fight off parasites. It's a whole city.
And we haven't even talked about the control system yet, the muscles that make it move and the nerves that tell them what to do.
Right. Let's touch on the layers below this busy lining. The outline mentions the interstitial cells of Cachal.
The ICCs, that's a new one for me.
They are fascinating. These are the pacemakers of the gut.
I thought the heart was the only organ with a pacemaker system.
Nope, the gut has its own intrinsic rhythm. These ICCs are a type of specialized cell that forms a network around the nerve terminals, sandwiched between the muscle layers of the gut wall.
And what do?
They spontaneously generate electrical slow waves. They set the basic electrical beat of the gut. Now, these slow waves don't always cause a contraction, but they set the potential for a contraction. They get the muscle cells close to the threshold.
So they keep the system primed and ready to go.
Exactly. And when nerve signals or hormones come along, they can push that wave over the threshold and trigger a coordinated contraction. If the ICC network is damaged or defective, you get serious motility disorders. The gut just doesn't move things along properly. It's like an orchestra losing its conductor.
And the orchestra itself, the musicians, are the muscles.
The muscularis externa. This is the thick muscle coat of the intestine. And it has two distinct layers that are oriented at 90 degrees to each other.
Okay.
There's an inner circular layer where the muscle fibers wrap around the tube like a ring. When they contract, they squeeze the tube and make it narrower. Then there's an outer longitudinal layer where the fibers run along the length of the tube. When they contract, they pull the tube and make it shorter.
And when they work together in a coordinated fashion?
They create peristalsis, that classic coordinated propulsive wave that pushes food forward. It's a highly choreographed dance between these two muscle layers, all set to the rhythm of the ICCs.
There is one last plumbing feature that we absolutely have to mention, and it's hidden inside each one of those millions of villi, the lacteals.
Yes. This is a crucial distinction in how we absorb different types of food. Most nutrients, your sugars, your amino acids, your small fats, they get absorbed by the enterocytes and then pass into the tiny blood capillaries that are inside the villi.
And from there they go to the portal vein in the liver, like we said.
Straight to the liver. But large fats are different.
Why?
They're the exception. Large fat molecules, triglycerides, get packaged into bigger particles called chylomicrons inside the enterocyte. And these particles are simply too big to squeeze through the walls of the blood capillaries. They physically cannot fit.
So they're stuck. Where do they go?
They have their own dedicated transport system. In the center of every single villus, there is a specialized lymphatic vessel. It's a blind-ended tube called a lacteal.
The lacteal. And the fats go in there.
The chylomicrons are dumped into the lacteal. And after a fatty meal, these lacteals fill up with this fatty fluid, which is called chyle. It looks milky white.
Hence the name lacteal, from the Latin for milk, lac.
Exactly. And here is the really important part. This lymphatic system bypasses the liver, at least initially.
Wait, it bypasses the main checkpoint?
It does. The lacteals all drain into larger lymph vessels in the mesentery, which collect in a big sac called the cisterna chyli, then travel up the thoracic duct through your chest, and eventually dump directly into the big veins near your neck.
So fats take the scenic route and enter the general bloodstream directly.
They do. They get distributed to the rest of the body, to fat stores and muscles, before they get processed by the liver. It's a physical necessity due to their large molecule size, but it also has huge metabolic implications and explains why certain fat-soluble drugs or toxins can behave very differently than water-soluble ones.
So looking back at our map now, we've navigated the treacherous C-shape of the duodenum with its ulcer zones and its vascular clamps.
We made it through the nutcracker.
We've learned how to distinguish the red-windowed, hard-working jejunum from the paler, fatty, immune-heavy ileum. And we've gone all the way down into the crypts to meet the bouncers and the spies and the stem cells.
We have covered a lot of ground. It's an amazing journey.
It really changes how you visualize your own body. It's not just some bag of organs. It's this incredibly precise, high-turnover, high-energy machine.
High turnover is the key phrase for me. When we step back and really synthesize all this, what stands out is the incredible energy cost of this system.
What do you mean by that?
Think about what we just described. To replace your entire intestinal lining, a surface the size of a tennis court, every 4 to 5 days requires massive biological resources. It's a constant, furious process of building, shedding, monitoring, and repairing.
And it has to do all of that while swimming in digestive acids and being constantly exposed to a universe of bacteria.
Right. We take digestion for granted. You eat a sandwich, you feel full, and you move on with your day. But to make that simple act happen, you have this 5-meter tube involving mechanical squeezing, chemical dissolution, hormonal signaling, immune surveillance, and highly selective absorption, all powered by a blood supply that has to be perfectly architected to avoid tangling on itself.
And if you are that patient with the ulcer eroding an artery, or the patient with the weight loss pinching the SMA, or the chemo patient whose stem cells have been shut down, you suddenly realize how fragile that incredible balance is.
It's a resilient system, but it is built upon very specific anatomical geometries and cellular behaviors. And when those geometries shift, even by a few millimeters, or those behaviors are interrupted, the whole system can fail catastrophically.
So here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on. We mentioned that the entire lining of your small intestine is replaced every single week. That means, quite literally, the gut you have sitting inside you right now is not the gut you had last Saturday.
Physically, no. It's made of brand new cells.
So in a way, you are a ship being completely rebuilt, plank by plank, while it's still sailing on the open sea. And the provocative question is this: what keeps it from going wrong? With that many cell divisions, we're talking billions upon billions of them every single day, the error rate should be higher. We should see more cancer, more mistakes, more chaos.
And that, I think, is the true miracle of the system. The miracle of the Paneth cells guarding the crypts, the M cells and Peyer's patches providing immune surveillance. The body puts as much energy and complexity into policing the errors and maintaining order as it does into the growth itself. It's a perfect dynamic balance of chaos and control.
A balance of chaos and control. I think that's the perfect place to wrap up our journey into the abdomen.
It's a fascinating place to visit. Glad we could map it out.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.